Part 15. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 141. Ruan Suanji looked at Xuelan, gritted her teeth for a moment, and then said with an unhappy look, "It's midnight now, and I still say the same thing. If there's nothing important, please don't disturb his rest." Xuelan didn't realize that Ruan Suanji would have such a big opinion against her. Her expression changed slightly. After a moment of silence, she stepped forward, approached Ruan Suanji, looked at Ruan Suanji up and down, and then he said with an unyielding expression, "I'm sorry, Elder Xianchen and I have important things to report. This is what our leader Xiao Li has specially told us." After hearing Xiao Li's special instructions, Ruan Suanji, who didn't want to give in, had to get out of the way. Xuelan breathed a sigh of relief before walking to the door and knocking lightly. However, the moment she opened the door, Xuelan was startled by the person in her eyes. Looking at this lowly girl, Xuelan frowned and said, "Qinglin? Why are you here? And you are in the same room with Elder Xianchen." Qinglin lowered his head in grievance, obviously extremely afraid of Xuelan. "She is the maid arranged by your captain to come and serve me, and I have recognized her as my sister, so please put away that expression of yours." Xianchen suddenly appeared behind Xuelan Qinglin, and there was a trace of murderous intent in his eyes when he looked at Xuelan. It was as if as long as Xuelan continued to look at Qinglin with such contemptuous eyes, Xianchen would never care to teach her a lesson. "I'm sorry." Xuelan didn't dare to look at Xianchen and hurriedly lowered his head to apologize. Xianchen shook his head, stretched out his hand to rub Qinglin's head, and continued to say to Xuelan, "What on earth is going on? I need you came here to inform me in the middle of the night." Xianchen glanced hard at Xuelan. Seeing that the other person was wearing sexy clothes, he was obviously ready to put her into his arms. However, there are many people at the moment and Xianchen naturally does not want to leave a bad impression in the mind of the little girl Qinglin. "Well, it's like this. Tomorrow is the test held every 3 months by the Modi mercenary group. It is also the busiest time in the group in March, so Captain Xiao Li would like to invite you to take a look before making any plans to leave." Shui Yan's voice was very low. When she looked at Xianchen again, she clearly noticed that just now, Xianchen's eyes had cut her hard. Under this gaze, a faint blush appeared on Shui Yan's delicate little face. "I know, if nothing happens, just go back." After Xianchen said this, he was about to close the door, but just as the door was about to close, Shui Yan's outstretched hand suddenly blocked her. "Well, Elder Xianchen, although you shouldn't, I still want to remind you, if you really need a maid, I think, I should be able." Xuelan said shamefully, "But she didn't want to greet you." But he closed the door. Xuelan, who was so angry that she was shaking all over, turned around and saw a very interesting smile on Ruan Suanji's face. "Haha, how about it? This is really a rejection," Ruan Suanji said jokingly, and Ruan Suanji, who was teased, retorted angrily, "So what? Aren't you still standing at the door?" "Oh, I just thought that I, Xuelan, am also the captain of the army corps, but I am not as good as her Qinglin," Xuelan said angrily, while Ruan Suanji on the side frowned and looked at the extremely angry Xuelan frowned and said, "What? You are a mature woman and you are jealous of a child. Haha, I'm afraid you don't know when you look like this. Don't look at the green scales. They look pretty good, but it's a pity that her body is filled with the blood of those dirty snake people," Xuelan said. When he said this, he couldn't help but show some disgust on his face. "What? You mean that girl Qinglin is a snake? Isn't Xianchen very dangerous?" Ruan Suanji said with a worried look on her face, but she didn't want to, causing Xuelan to roll her eyes. "Tisk tisk, I'm afraid you haven't heard it yet. Xianchen was very angry just now. What did you say, that Qinglin is her sister?" Ruan Suanji frowned and said nothing, but Qinglin, who was unaware of the situation in the room, trembled slightly with a grieved body. Looking at the cute little face that should have made countless people fall in love with her, it was actually filled with gloom at this moment. Xian Chen, who was standing next to Qinglin, had a pair of dark eyes that seemed to be trembling. While the two women outside were talking continuously, Xian Chen, who was standing next to Qinglin, put his hand on Qinglin's shoulder and said comfortingly, "Qinglin is good, brother, can I help you teach them a lesson?" Xian Chen finished speaking and was about to open the door, but at this moment, Qinglin stretched out his hand to hold Xian Chen and said aggrievedly to Xian Chen with a pale face, "Don't be like this, brother Xian Chen, Qinglin is originally a snake man. What they said is not unreasonable." Seeing that the little girl was so wronged, Xian Chen immediately opened the door and looked at the two girls who were still in the courtyard. Lei Lei said angrily, "Have you said enough? Do you really want me to hit someone?" The two girls were startled. Ruan Suanji immediately walked to Xian Chen and looked at Xian Chen with an aggrieved look. "I'm sorry Xian Chen, we shouldn't say anything about her." "Suanji, it's late at night, go and have a rest." Xian Chen glanced at Ruan Suanji helplessly and motioned for her to leave. Knowing that this was the step given by Xian Chen, Ruan Suanji immediately showed a sweet smile and disappeared in Xian Chen. In front of the dust. It would be embarrassing to leave Xuelan alone and disheveled in the wind. Xuelan, who was so embarrassed, really didn't know what to say. However, at this moment, Xian Chen suddenly walked up to Xuelan, exuding the unique aura of Do Huang, and looked at Xuelan with a look of contempt on his face. Said, "Qinglin is my sister. From today on, if I hear some bad things about her again, don't blame me, Xian Chen, for being unkind and incompetent. I'm sorry, Elder Xian Chen, please, let me apologize to you like this." Huh. Team Swillen, why are they kneeling in front of brother Xian Chen? And they are so close. What are they doing? Qinglin held the door and looked at the man standing in the courtyard eagerly. Xian Chen and Xuelan were in the middle. Driven by curiosity, Qinglin was about to step forward to check, but suddenly heard Xian Chen scolding, "Qinglin, go to the room to rest. Children should not watch what is between adults." "Humph, brother Xian Chen is only a few years older than me, he is obviously a kid, okay." Qinglin said angrily, and then gently closed the door with Suankin's embarrassed expression on his face. Xian Chen and Xuelan in the courtyard gradually became more subtle under the gentle breeze. After an unknown amount of time, when Xuelan opened her eyes with a confused look on her face, Xian Chen frowned at Xuelan and said, "I don't want others to know about today's incident, so I'm warning you, don't think you're apologizing like this. I will forgive you." "Yes, Elder." Xuelan said extremely apologetically, but without thinking, Xian Chen turned around and threw out a wristband. Xuelan subconsciously caught it and looked at the green wrist, but couldn't come back to her senses for a long time. This is a magic weapon that can withstand the attacks of Do Wang and below. It can be regarded as the reward for what you did to me. I thank you, Elder." Xuelan looked sad, obviously very dissatisfied with Xian Chen's behavior, but there was nothing she could do about it. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Baixiong. Chapter 142. Ignoring Xuelan behind him, Xian Chen silently walked back to the room. As the door closed, Xuelan left with a sad face. However, not long after Xuelan left, she suddenly turned a corner and a black shadow appeared instantly, holding her arm and leaning against the wall. "Haha, I can't tell, Xuelan. You are quite strong on weekdays, but you're not a woman at heart." The voice was extremely thick, obviously at the level of a big man. But Xuelan frowned, and after hearing this familiar voice, she immediately yelled angrily at the person behind her, "Gongliu! What do you want to do?" "Haha, Of course I want to. Gongliu said with a lewd expression, not forgetting to stick out his tongue. However, at this moment, a black shadow quietly appeared behind him. Just when Gongliu was about to take action, the black shadow suddenly appeared and frowned, "Don't you know she is my woman?" Xian Chen, Shui Yan's beautiful eyes suddenly flashed with light. But Gongliu, who was about to commit the crime, was frightened. He is just a support soldier with only 8 stars of fighting master. Facing such an elder of Yunlin sect who has the strength of fighting master, he, Gongliu, is naturally extremely afraid. He immediately let go of Xuelan and said to Xian Chen very apologetically, "I'm sorry, Elder Xian Chen. I didn't mean it, I just drank too much at night, so I did it on a whim." Looking at this guy named Gongliu, Xian Chen was looking at him with murderous intent. So he suddenly took action, pinched his neck fiercely, and said angrily, "I, Xian Chen, have never liked being with others. If I can do it, I will never talk nonsense." Boom! Suankan's hand that clenched Gongliu's neck tightened instantly, and then Gongliu died instantly. Xuelan, who was standing by the side, turned pale with fear. At this moment, before Xuelan could react, a ball of flame suddenly appeared in Xian Chen's palm. As the flames burned, Gongliu, who had planned evil intentions against Xuelan, was turned into ashes under the fire and completely merged with the air. "It seems that you can't leave my room tonight, follow me." Xian Chen exhaled helplessly, then motioned for her to follow him and rushed towards the cabin not far away. Not long after, as footsteps gradually sounded in the courtyard, Qinglin immediately opened the door with an excited face. However, when she saw Xian Chen following Xuelan, her little face instantly became a little ugly. With an angry look on his face, Qinglin ran towards the room with a grieved expression on his face. However, as the two of them entered the room, Qinglin stood beside the bed in a very aggrieved manner. Looking at the honest Qinglin, Xian Chen frowned slightly. After a moment of silence, he took out a bottle of elixir from the Naja, handed it to Qinglin, who had a small face, and said softly, "Qinglin, this is what my brother has done for you. Prepare elixirs that can transform you. Although each elixir can only last for 100 days, I think these should be enough for you to take until you can completely transform." "Huh? Brother Xian Chen means, if I take these, can I become like a normal girl?" Qinglin opened her beautiful eyes and looked at Xian Chen with eyes full of hope. At this moment, Xuelan, who was standing behind Xian Chen, stood up and was very vigilant. She held Xian Chen's arm and said to Xian Chen with a sad face, "I'm sorry, Elder Xian Chen. Although it's very inappropriate, I have to tell you, Qinglin, although Qinglin, she is still a child." "What the hell?" Xian Chen gave Xuelan a speechless look, obviously being deeply misunderstood by Xuelan. Qinglin, on the other hand, had his eyes wide open and looked confused, but he had secretly eaten one. Just when Xuelan finished secretly speaking, the pill taken by Qinglin changed instantly. Seeing the colorful light that appeared, Xuelan held her mouth in shock. As the light disappeared, the blue scales that Qinglin had originally also gradually disappeared. And the 3 tiny green dots that should have been in her green pupil seemed to have completely disappeared. "Wow! Qinglin. You have really changed." Xuelan hugged Qinglin in shock, but Qinglin was shocked and speechless. As if she could feel Qinglin's trembling, Xuelan turned to Xian Chen and said, "Elder Xian Chen, I didn't expect you to be such a nice person." "Haha, she is my sister. By the way, Qinglin, you must also want to take a bath when you are completely human," Xian Chen said cheerfully, but Xuelan and Qinglin both had expressions on their faces, staring confused. But at this moment, Xian Chen suddenly hugged him from left to right. Even though the two of them looked nervous, they both hugged Xian Chen subconsciously. "What's going on, brother Xian Chen?" Qinglin's pretty face turned crimson, Obviously she was very curious about Suankin's behavior. Although Xuelan was also confused, fortunately she was already a mature girl, so she was naturally extremely calm. I'll show you the scenery of the night sky. Boom. As soon as Xianchen finished speaking, he immediately swooped out of the courtyard gate. The two girls in Xianchen's arms also completely realized at this moment that behind Xianchen, there was a pair of wings as black as ink. You. How come you have wings? Xuelan looked at Xianchen in surprise. She couldn't believe that Xianchen, who only had the strength of a fighting master, actually had a pair of lifelike wings. Don't make any noise, Xianchen said extremely calmly, causing Xuelan to shut up immediately. Not long after, everyone came to the only place with a river in Desert City. Looking at the ocean in the desert, both of them had a lot of surprise on their faces. This is the most important place in Machen, and it is guarded by many people. Xuelan covered her mouth in surprise. Suankin's mouth raised a slight arc, and said lightly, for you, it may be the most important place, but to me, Xianchen, they are nothing more than ants in my palm. Qinglin, you and Sister Xuelan can take a bath here. I'll go outside to help you guard. Rather than being outside, it is better to stand on the top of the trees and observe silently. Xuelan felt a little speechless and rolled her eyes at Xianchen, then she took Qinglin's little hand and said lightly to Qinglin, let's go Qinglin, sister will take you to take a bath. Qinglin looked at Xianchen curiously, but Xianchen was leaning against the trees extremely calmly. Watching all this silently. Among the trees, those who were patrolling normally were instantly killed by extremely small flames before they even got close to the river. Sister, did you see that there seemed to be flames in those woods? And they were running around. Qinglin was held in Xueyan's arms while taking a bath. She looked at the flames appearing in the woods, but she felt very curious. Xuelan was embarrassed looking at those flames, but she still explained very calmly, that, those flames were probably made by your brother on purpose to show you. Xianchen, who was leaning on the tree trunk, stretched out his fingers, and a small flame lit up on his index finger. Looking at the flame, Xianchen looked up at the night sky and said lightly, it seems that tonight is destined to be unquiet. Whoosh! Who dares to kill members of my sand mercenary group? I think they are impatient. Just as Xianchen finished speaking, a burly middle-aged man leading many of his men ran toward the river in thunderous rage while roaring. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Baixiong. Chapter 143. Whoosh. One after another extremely fast figures rushed toward Xianchen. Xianchen, who was leaning on the tree trunk, was deeply hidden under the cover of the trees. Xuelan, who was in the river, had a look of fear on his face after hearing the strange noise on the bank. Obviously, she knew who was responsible for guarding the river tonight. Not long after, several powerful figures appeared in Xueyan's sight one after another. Looking at those vicious characters, Xuelan couldn't help but frown. Qinglin, who was next to Xuelan, clung to her chest in fear. After all, this kind of thing has a very significant impact on Qinglin, who is still a child. Get out of here, guys in the river. Don't you know that this river is the only clear water in Stone Desert City? The middle-aged Lele standing on the bank said angrily, obviously very angry at the woman in the river. But the soldiers who followed around him all had wretched looks on their faces. One of them licked his tongue and said to the middle-aged man next to him, Captain Chiu Guanghe, this river is our top priority in Shimo City, but we must not take advantage of the two women in the water. Haha, what? Have you got some evil thoughts again? Chiu Guanghe replied with a sneer, which made the young man next to him not angry but laughing. Haha, Captain Chiu Guanghe is worthy of being the leader. He can see my thoughts so easily, the young man said with a vulgar expression, but Qiu Guanghe rolled his eyes for a while. Xuelan, who was in the water, opened her beautiful eyes in shock. She looked at the middle-aged man standing on the shore. She was so frightened that she frowned at Qinglin beside her and said, "Qinglin, those on the shore are all bad people. Although you have recovered your body, you are still a snake in your heart, so when I get ashore, you should leave as soon as possible." "But Sister Xuelan, isn't Brother Xianchen on the shore? Why doesn't he come out to save us?" Qinglin asked Xuelan with an aggrieved look, obviously not believing that the brother she had just recognized would leave her like this. Qiu Guanghe, who was on the shore, stared intently at the woman who was gradually swimming towards the shore. When he saw her face clearly, he roared with a ferocious expression, "You Xuelan! Our regiment leader is still ahead of us. Who is so bold and dares to cross this river? It turns out to be you. Do you really think that with the support of people from the Yunlin sect, we, the Sand Embrace Corps, are really afraid of you? Haha, Commander Qiu, Xuelan, don't know what you are talking about, but I still want to kindly remind you, please don't be too confident." Xuelan leaned in slowly, and then jumped up, which was extremely satisfying. The picture instantly attracted the attention of a large number of people. The soldiers standing on the shore looked at the scene with nymphomaniac expressions on their faces. This woman. Xianchen leaned on the tree trunk and looked at Xuelan jumping up from the water, but there was a hint of indifference in his eyes. "Tisk, tisk, this woman looks pretty crazy, tisk, tisk, how about a woman? Are you willing to be my young Master Wang's woman? You know, young Master Wang, really have nothing in this life except money." This person who calls himself the young man who was the young man said with a proud look on his face. Under Shui Yan's indifferent gaze, the young man felt very excited, but at this moment, Qiu Guanghe beside him hurriedly evaded. There was only a rumble and an explosion, and a large crater instantly appeared where the young man had been standing. As the fire appeared, the soldiers who followed were all blind and incoherent. Qiu Guanghe became furious and roared, "Who? Get out of here!" Bang bang bang. Just when Qiu Guanghe was furious, the crisp sound of applause kept ringing in his ears like harsh bells. "Qiu Guanghe, how brave are you? You don't even dare to peek at my woman taking a bath." Xianchen's cold voice was like a cold sharp blade, piercing deeply into Qiu Guanghe's heart. Qiu Guanghe looked at Xianchen in disbelief. He couldn't believe that the guy hiding in the dark and leading Xuelan and others to take a bath was actually Xianchen, a distinguished guest of the Modi mercenary group. "How could it be you?" Qiu Guanghe looked at Xianchen with a complicated expression. He couldn't believe that he would meet him here. Xianchen turned around and looked at Xuelan. Seeing Shui Yan's appearance, he took out a set of clean robes from Naja and helped her put it on. "Elder Xianchen, although it shouldn't be like this, as the leader of the city's army, I still have the right to warn you that this river is very important to our stone desert city. Now you let your woman here. If you take a bath in the river, why should we, the soldiers, drink in the future?" Qiu Guanghe roared angrily. The soldiers behind him all drew their weapons one after another, obviously preparing to confront Xianchen head-on. But Xianchen raised his brows, revealed a sneer at the corner of his mouth, and uttered a few words coldly, "These things are not my business." Boom! As soon as Xianchen finished speaking, there was an extremely terrifying aura emitting from his body. Xianchen's aura was rising steadily, and then, a layer of green light visible to the naked eye appeared about a foot around him. Thump thump! Qiu Guanghe was so frightened that he stepped back repeatedly, his eyes were cold, and he continued towards Xianchen, "Elder Xianchen, are you really planning to go to war for 2 women and my entire Sand Support Corps? You don't deserve it." Boom! Xianchen shouted softly, then raised his leg and kicked Qiu Guanghe hard in the abdomen, but Qiu Guanghe hit the trees not far away like a cannonball. Puff! Qiu Guanghe spit out blood. Although the strength was good, the soldiers who were more than a step below Xianchen were all trembling with fear. But when Xianchen looked at these supporting soldiers, a trace of cruelty flashed in his eyes. He flicked his fingers, and then the palm of Suanken's right hand shone with green energy. As a terrifying pressure gradually brewed, Qiu Guanghe, who was struggling, stood up and shouted loudly to Xianchen, "Xianchen! These people are just a group of soldiers supporting their families. I hope you can let them go. I, Qiu Guanghe, am willing to die for them." "You have no right to say such things to me." Xianchen looked down at Qiu Guanghe, his tone full of unbreakable majesty. "You! I will fight with you." Qiu Guanghe instantly felt like he was getting a shot of blood. He stood up bravely, bursting out with the momentum of a great fighter, ready to fight Xianchen to the death. Seeking death, the corner of Xianchen's mouth raised slightly, and he just raised his hand casually, and saw the green energy appearing in his palm slamming down towards the ground. There was a loud rumble, and the whole land seemed to be shaking. Those who were sleeping all woke up at this moment. In the Modi mercenary regiment's mansion, the soldiers gathered in the square urgently with a tacit understanding. Xiao Li frowned and turned to the night guards beside him, saying with a sullen expression, "What's going on? How come there was an explosion all of a sudden?" "Captain. It seems to be coming from Shui Quan." One of the soldiers frowned and replied respectfully to Xiao Li. Xiao Li frowned slightly. After being confused for a moment, he immediately reacted and shouted loudly to everyone, "Quick! Everyone rush to the courtyard where Xianchen is. As you command." Following Xiao Li's order, these extremely loyal soldiers followed Xiao Li one after another and rushed towards the small courtyard where Xianchen temporarily lived. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Baixiong. Chapter 144. The wind blows the fallen leaves? A large number of soldiers rushed towards the small courtyard where Xianchen was. However, when all the supporting troops arrived, they discovered that the disciples of the Yunlin sect were already waiting early. And at the front of these disciples stood a girl holding a sword. The girl frowned slightly and looked at Xiao Li, who was at the front of the army, and said with a frown, "Commander Xiao Li, if you don't investigate the origin of the explosion, how can you come to us? Is this how you treat guests?" Xiao Li looked at Ruan Suanji with dark eyes. Seeing that the other party had obviously guessed something, he sneered and said apologetically to Ruan Suanji, "I think you misunderstood. We are here to check whether you are injured." "Haha, it's really ridiculous. Although the explosion was very close, since you are all fine, why must something happen to us?" "You. What an articulate girl." Xiao Li complained helplessly, but at this moment, the closed door suddenly opened, and then, a graceful woman appeared in the sight of the soldiers. "Captain Swillen." Danze looked at the woman who walked out of Xianchen House in shock, his face full of surprise. And those who support the soldiers don't have this kind of expression. Xiao Li looked at Xuelan, frowned and asked, "Xuelan, are you feeling normal tonight?" Xuelan opened her big, watery eyes and slightly opened her rosy mouth, back to the leader, "Tonight is normal. Elder Xianchen has gone to bed." "Have you gone to bed?" "Haha, it seems that you have served me well," Xiao Li said angrily, waved his hand, and continued, "Brothers, please go back and rest." "Yes." The soldiers left one after another, and Xiao Li continued to say to Xuelan, "Don't forget to take the test held every 3 months by the Modi mercenary group tomorrow. Remember to call him." "Yes." Xiao Li said lightly, then under Xueyan's gaze, he took a step and chose to leave. Not long after, Xuelan walked back to the room, and naturally there was Ruan Suanji behind her. Looking at the girl Qinglin who was already lying next to Xianchen, Ruan Suanji frowned and said, "Didn't you promise me that you wouldn't touch her?" "You misunderstood, I didn't touch her." Xianchen also frowned, obviously feeling that Ruan Suanji's inquiry was unreasonable. However, Ruan Suanji didn't give Xianchen a chance to explain. She raised her hand and slapped Xianchen hard, and immediately left the room. The disciples who wanted to enter the room all moved away after seeing the menacing Ruan Suanji. Xianchen felt his face burning, while Qinglin stretched out his small hand and gently stroked Xianchen's cheek. He opened his mouth slightly and exhaled hot air, and said comfortingly, "Brother, why did that sister hit you?" "It's nothing, maybe my aunt is here," Xianchen replied helplessly. "Aunt? Sister, is her aunt here?" "Oh, it turns out that aunt gets angry when she comes. It's so strange. This." Shui Yan's cheeks twitched in embarrassment, looking at the innocent Qinglin. There was really nothing she could do. "You guys rest, I'll go to the roof to get some fresh air." Xianchen stood up and left the bed, jumping towards the roof. He lay on his back on the roof, silently looking at the night sky. Swilin and Qinglin were left behind, messy in the room. A night of silence. When the sky gradually clears up, an extremely sweet voice kept reaching Xianchen's ears. Brother, it's dawn, why don't you get up?" Xianchen woke up amidst the sounds that sounded like souls. He stretched out his hand to block the dazzling sunlight and tilted his head to look down. In the courtyard, Qinglin put her hands on her thin waist and looked at Xianchen helplessly on the roof with her delicate little face, calling out one after another. Under Qinglin's shout, Xianchen sat up lazily with his eyelids drooped. "Is it going to be daylight so soon?" Xianchen said helplessly, then jumped down from the roof and landed steadily beside Qinglin. "Brother, today is the test held every 3 months by the Modi mercenary group. Don't forget it." Qinglin pouted her mouth and sighed, looking at Xianchen with helplessness in her eyes. He took Qinglin's little hand and walked out of the hospital before Qinglin could react. Almost the moment he went out, Xianchen noticed that the Yunlin sect disciples were already waiting at the door. "Hello, Elder." "Good morning, Elder. You must have been very hard last night, otherwise you wouldn't have woken up at this time." "Elder, Ruan Suanji said that she would go for the test first, so she asked us to wait for you here." Xianchen rolled his eyes at these guys speechlessly, looked at Qinglin beside him and said lightly, "Qinglin, these guys are bad people, you don't want to deal with them." "A little bit, I know, brother." Qinglin looked at Xianchen's sunny smile, exhaled slightly, smiled lightly, and his pure face was covered with a layer of attractive rosy red. Under this extremely pure smile, the disciples around him all looked like nymphs. It's over. I really want to fall in love with this girl." "Wow, you're dying, this little girl is really my sister." Tisk, if the elder becomes my uncle, wouldn't I become a successful person in the Yunlin sect?" "What are you thinking about, Pa?" Xianchen raised his hand and patted the disciple's head lightly, then held Qinglin's little hand and rushed towards the place where the Yongbing group was competing. But the surrounding disciples cheered. After all, in their eyes, Xianchen did not teach them a lesson. This situation was naturally an extremely exciting thing for these people. I don't know how long it took, but the vast team arrived at the training ground for the competition. A fierce battle has begun here. Seeing that there were hundreds of people fighting in the huge arena, Xianchen's eyes showed a hint of complexity. "Young man, why don't you take a gamble? Let's take a guess. Who are the 5 people who persisted in the end? You know, if there are 5 people left this time, there is a chance that they can become the captain of the squadron." This was an unkind-looking young man with a sinister look on his face. He obviously had great contempt for Xianchen from the bottom of his heart. "Oh," Xianchen was stunned for a moment and looked up at the young man with disdain. The Yunlin sect disciples standing behind Xianchen each pulled out their swords and yelled at the yin and yang young man who only had the strength of 3 stars as a fighter, "What are you doing? What are you doing with this yin and yang look thing? Huh? Boy. I am the captain of the Yongbing regiment. What kind of tone are you talking about? This sinister young man roared busily, attracting the attention of many people in an instant. At this moment, when Xian Chen was about to take action, a middle-aged man raised his hand and hit him hard in the face. Captain Yangfu. What do you mean? The young man roared angrily. But the middle-aged man who was called Yangfu slapped him hard twice, looked at the high platform across the field with an angry look on his face, and said angrily, "Do you want to embarrass the captain and the others? Don't forget, today the entire city's military support groups are here to watch the battle." I don't dare." The young man hurriedly lowered his head and apologized again and again. Yangfu exhaled a deep breath, and then said respectfully to Xian Chen, "Elder Xian Chen, your audience seats have been arranged by the group leader. Please come with me." The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Baixiong. Chapter 145. Captain, the people from Yunlin sect have made arrangements. Yangfu walked up to Xiao Li and spoke respectfully. Pointing to the arranged place, he replied to Xiao Li. Xiao Li frowned slightly, noticed the large number of Yunlin sect disciples, and said, "Have the investigation of last night's explosion been clear?" Back to the leader, "The explosion last night has been investigated clearly, but..." Yangfu took a deep breath, but remained silent. Xiao Ding, who was sitting next to Xiao Li, looked at Yangfu who was silent and asked, "What? Is it possible that the explosion has been fully investigated and we can't know about it?" "No, it's not such a captain, it's just that, the guys from the Sand Embrace Corps were responsible for the safety of the river last night. You don't know, in yesterday's explosion, along with their captain, and those high-level officials, they all died in the explosion." "All dead?" Xiao Ding looked at Yangfu in shock. He couldn't believe that in yesterday's explosion, the most powerful Sand Support Corps in Shimo City was eradicated instantly. "Brother, it is very likely that Xian Chen did this, because when I was investigating last night," Xiao Li said with a sullen expression, while Xiao Ding frowned and kept staring at Xiao Li's rear. Xiao Li noticed something and turned around immediately. When he saw Xian Chen appeared behind him without knowing when, he looked very frightened. After many years of dominance in this stone desert city, it was the first time that he encountered such a person who could make him frightened. He turned out to be Xian Chen. This was something Xiao Li could not accept no matter what. However, Xian Chen smiled and said calmly to Xiao Li, "Captain Xiao Li, I see that these brothers are fighting hard for the status of team leader. Why don't you and I go to the ring to help? How are you interested?" Under Xian Chen's gaze, Xiao Ding and Xiao Li looked at each other, obviously not understanding Xian Chen's words. However, being able to become the leader of the regiment in the desert must be someone with extraordinary ability. Xiao Ding looked up at Xian Chen and smiled heartily, then reached out and patted Xiao Li's shoulder. "Go ahead, second brother, since Elder Xian Chen wants to after fighting with you, don't let down our entire brothers who support the army." "Brother, do you want me to die?" Xiao Li looked at Xiao Ding in shock. He couldn't believe that his own eldest brother would push him out at this time. "Then what else can we do? Do we have to reject him? Don't forget, those brothers who support the army are watching you." "What?" When Xiao Li heard Xiao Ding's reminder, he quickly glanced forward. However, when he saw the brothers supporting the army looking at him with admiration, he naturally became more frightened. This feeling of riding a tiger and being unable to get off made Xiao Li very sad. However, just when Xiao Li was still debating whether to go to the ring or not, a sudden burst of cheers made Xiao Li react from his confusion again. I don't know how long it had been, but Xian Chen was already standing on the ring and attracted the attention of many supporters. Seeing this, Xiao Li suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed, so under the extremely expectant eyes of the soldiers, he jumped up towards the ring and stood firmly in the field. Looking at Xiao Li's actions, waves of fanatical shouts formed around the training ground, forming a wave of sound that soared into the sky. Under these cheers, Xiao Li looked proud. It was obvious that he enjoyed this feeling very much. Haha, Elder Xian Chen, don't blame me for being ruthless under the sword, Xiao Li shouted softly, wiped Naja lightly, and held an extremely sharp sword tightly in his hand. You must know that the attributes of Xiao Li's fighting spirit belong to the thunder system. In addition, Xiao Li's precision in the thunder fighting spirit has already reached a high level. Therefore, the moment he grasped the sword, on the blade of the sword, there was a hint of thunder. Listening to bursts of electricity, all the soldiers under the ring cheered. After all, Xiao Li was a kind of belief in the eyes of them. Belongs to a godlike existence. However, Xian Chen smiled faintly and looked at Xiao Li as if he were looking at a clown. As the leader of the group, Xiao Li could naturally see the contempt in Xian Chen's eyes. However, due to his status, he could only bite the bullet and rush towards Xian Chen with a knife. Well done, Xian Chen moved slightly, and when Xiao Li's sword was about to land on his face, Xian Chen suddenly punched out and blocked the blade of Xiao Li's sword with a heavy punch. Hearing a bang, the treasured sword that Xiao Li had always been proud of suddenly broke into two pieces and fell to the ground under Xian Chen's heavy punch. Xiao Li only felt the pain from the tiger's mouth, and looked at Xian Chen, who was so casual. He was full of vigilance. He firmly believes that Xian Chen's strength is definitely not something that can be easily seen with the eyes. Xiao Ding, who was in the audience, was also very shocked. He had competed with Xiao Li in the past, so he naturally knew Xiao Li's strength. Now that the sword had broken into two pieces, Xiao Ding, who also had the strength of a fighting master, naturally felt extremely oppressive discomfort at this moment. Shui Yan's beautiful eyelashes trembled slightly. Looking at Xian Chen, who easily defeated Xiao Li standing on the ring, a strange light appeared in her beautiful eyes. As for the Yunlin sect disciples, they all exclaimed, "Elder Xian Chen is awesome. Yunlin sect is awesome. Ha ha ha. What a leader of the supporting corps. What a supporting corps. That's just rubbish in front of our Elder Xian Chen. Hey boy. What do you mean by this? Are you looking for death?" Yu Yongbing roared angrily, but what he didn't want to receive was the contempt of several Yunlin sect disciples. The eyes of these disciples were full of venom, and the shocked soldier immediately shrank his neck. Ruan Suanji frowned slightly and said angrily to the disciples around her, "Please pay attention to your identity. This is a desert, not an empire." Yes. These disciples had no choice but to put away their energy and act honestly. After Xiao Li was easily defeated by Xian Chen, he looked extremely gloomy and said to Xian Chen, "Boy, it seems you are qualified to let me use all my strength." Xiao Li waved his arm, and then a silver-stemmed spear exuding terrifying thunder was easily held in his hand. The moment the spear appeared, the soldiers who had low morale started roaring again. Obviously, this silver spear is the best proof of Xiao Li's strength. Watch the move. Xiao Li was furious. Black hair without wind automatically. So cool. I saw his spear coming out like a dragon, stabbing towards Xian Chen continuously. As the gun shadows continued, Xian Chen dodged them very easily. Xian Chen suddenly stopped when Xiao Li stabbed multiple spear shadows. At the moment when Xiao Li lost consciousness, Xian Chen raised his palm and turned it into a fist, and swung it hard towards Xiao Li's heart. "Stop!" Xiao Ding roared loudly. However, Xian Chen has already punched. Xiao Li was sweating all over his body. He was so frightened that he wanted to avoid it, but it was too late. As Suankan's fist hit his heart hard, Xiao Li felt his heart split into pieces instantly, but his pupils dilated. Well. Xiao Li, with a sweet voice, closed his eyes tightly and flew backwards violently. Second brother, Xiao Ding immediately stood up and without thinking, rushed towards Xiao Li, who was about to fly backwards to the ground. Looking at Xiao Li, who was dying in his arms, Xiao Ding looked nervous and said, "Second brother. Big brother, this guy is pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger, be careful," Xiao Li said at the end. His eyes widened, and he was so unwilling that he died suddenly in the arms of his eldest brother Xiao Ding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Baixiong. Chapter 146. Xian Chen. How dare you kill my second brother? Do you really think that our Motai Ioncore has no one left? Xiao Ding roared angrily, wishing to kill Xian Chen with his eyes. However, the reality ruthlessly told him that this was obviously impossible to achieve. Looking at Xiao Ding with angry eyes, Xian Chen shook his arm casually, then raised his middle finger, smiled contemptuously at Xiao Ding in the audience. You can come together, but if I, Xian Chen, step back even half a step, even if I lose. You, Xiao Ding was extremely angry. Looking at the arrogant Xian Chen, his lungs were about to explode. However, he picked up Xiao Li, whose life and death were unknown, without any composition, and stared at Xian Chen with extremely vicious eyes. Boy, if you have the ability, kill us all. That's what you said? Xian Chen said ruthlessly, and just stood casually on the stage. An extremely terrifying pressure rushed out of his body in an instant. Under this extremely terrifying pressure, those soldiers who wanted to resist were forced to kneel down and bow their heads at this moment. Just when Xian Chen was about to kill all these soldiers, Kinglin, who was held by Swilin, raised his head and shouted to Xian Chen on the ring, "Brother Xian Chen can't do this. Xiao Ding the leader is Kinglin's savior. Please don't kill him. Don't hurt these people." "Qinglin. What nonsense are you talking about? Have you forgotten how these soldiers treat you on weekdays? The one who comes to the rescue and pleads for mercy will be the little girl Kinglin." Ruan Suanji also frowned, looked at Xuelan and Qinglin, and then frowned and said, "I advise you not to talk too much. Xian Chen's strength, looking at the entire Tajer desert, is probably only Medusa one person can fight." Suanji. Xian Chen, who was standing on the ring, looked at Ruan Suanji with complicated eyes. He originally thought that Ruan Suanji didn't know his true strength, but now he could clearly feel from the other party's words that the other party not only knew his cultivation level, but also knew his own strength very well. Xuelan was not surprised when she heard Ruan Suanji's words. She had already seen through everything when Xian Chen was able to take the two of them to the river to bathe on his wings last night. As for the Yunlin sect disciples, they were all a little confused. Although they were all curious about Xian Chen's true strength, when they heard Ruan Suanji's words, they all had to think seriously about Xian Chen's cultivation level. After all, he had reached what a level? Those arrogant soldiers finally lowered their heads in shame. For these guys who have not even reached the level of Do Master, it is destined that only death will accompany them. Xiao Ding frowned. He had the strength of a fighting master, so of course he could hear every word Ruan Suanji said very clearly. Although he had doubted Xian Chen's strength, and even was reminded several times by Xiao Li but never realized it, at this moment, he had to admit that Xian Chen's strength was probably far beyond that of the great fighter, or even higher. "Xian Chen, this matter is my fault. Since Xiao Li is dead now, I hope you will not forget the villain's fault and let us go." Xiao Ding gritted his teeth and begged for mercy. Obviously he was really afraid that Xian Chen would be here. Kill them all in one thought. After all, they are more willing to live than to die. Danzai saw that the guy he once regarded as a hero had now turned into the god of death who wanted to take their lives. His face, which had experienced countless life and death, finally shed tears of regret. "Haha, is it too late to beg for mercy now? But I, Xian Chen, am not an unreasonable person. Well, I think my shoes are a little dirty, why don't you clean them up for me?" What? He even asked our group leader to clean his shoes. How is this possible? Let our leader Xiao Ding shine his shoes, it would be better to actually kill him. Ha ha ha, just wipe it off. It's better than letting you die. That's right. Our Yunlin sect has always convinced people with virtue. As long as your leader can clean our elders' shoes, their elders will definitely let you go. Tisk tisk, this is a chance to save your life. I don't think you guys want to lose your lives because of your captain, right? Not to mention, under the fan lanterns of these disciples, those supporters who were unwilling to do so. At this moment, there was an extremely unpleasant feeling burning in my heart. Especially the troops from other forces who were invited to watch the battle are extremely dissatisfied at this moment. They all looked at Xiao Ding angrily, and some even picked up fruits and threw them at him. Without the pressure of momentum, those supporting soldiers raised their heads and yelled at Xiao Ding. All kinds of unpleasant words kept coming. Xiao Ding was so angry that he was shaking all over, but he could do nothing. Captain Xiao Ding. Qinglin looked at Xiao Ding eagerly. She still didn't know what could make Xianchen so angry. Xuelan took Qinglin's arm and warned Qinglin again, "Qinglin, your brother has his own ideas. I advise you to be more honest." Qinglin's expression turned pale, and he wanted to refute but had no confidence at all. Ruan Suanji watched the scene happen with indifferent eyes. She is a disciple of the Yunlin sect, and a direct disciple of the Yunlin sect, so she naturally knows the rules of the world. How about Xiao Ding? My patience is very limited. Boom. Xianchen raised his hand and dropped it. In an instant, the crowd of quarrelsome soldiers turned into dust and disappeared with a deafening roar. Looking at the burning flames, the remaining soldiers looked at Xianchen in horror, fearing that if Xianchen was unhappy, he would kill them all in the next second. Xiao Ding was so angry that his whole body trembled, so he immediately stood up and roared loudly at Xianchen, "I will do as you are told. A man can bend and stretch." Xiao Ding roared, instantly making those soldiers extremely ashamed. This is a real fighting master. Now, in front of a young man, he had to lower his posture. Every step Xiao Ding took was extremely heavy. When he came to Xianchen, looking at Xianchen with a cold face, Xiao Ding seemed to have made up his mind. He squatted down behind him, took out a clean handkerchief from Naja, and began to wipe it carefully. Suanken's shoes. It was eerily quiet at the moment, and one could even hear the heartbeat of a person. Some of the desperate soldiers found it even harder to look at Xiao Ding's appearance. Danzi's faith collapsed and he lay on the ground and kept wailing. Just when Xiao Ding was about to wipe everything clean, Xianchen's next voice was like a time bomb, and he was so angry that he instantly ignited it. "Wait, use your tongue to wipe it clean for me." Xianchen's extremely cold voice made Xiao Ding so angry that murderous intent surged through his body. A layer of gauze transformed from fighting spirit appeared instantly. Just when he was about to attack Xianchen, a sharp sword was pressed hard against his back without knowing when. "Stop! Do you really think that there is no one in our Yunlin sect?" This familiar yet unfamiliar voice made Xiao Ding's pupils dilate instantly in shock. Looking back at this pure-faced woman, Xiao Ding was so angry that his whole body was trembling without a trace of fighting spirit. "Xianchen, although I, Ruan Suanji, don't like you, after all, we are just here to practice under the order of the sect master, why don't you give me some face and spare them?" The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 147. Boom. As soon as Ruan Suanji finished speaking, there was a loud noise right where Xianchen was. Under this loud noise, everyone could almost see with their naked eyes an invisible ripple of energy suddenly spreading out from the solace of Xianchen's feet, and then gradually dissipated after more than 10 meters away. Under this ripple of energy, the faces of those supporting soldiers were ashen. Because they all know very well that it is impossible to defeat Xianchen, and it is absolutely impossible to kill Xian Chen. The strong wind rippled and roared, lifting Ruan Suanji's skirt instantly. Under this unique scenery, those soldiers who had loud hearts and minds were rarely paying attention at this moment. Ruan Suanji frowned, looked at Xian Chen, who was not angry and assertive, and continued to speak. Xian Chen, although you are very angry when I say this, I, Ruan Suanji, am also a member of Yunlin sect after all, so I can't look at it let you continue to make mistakes. Surround them all. Just when the air was filled with a strong smell of gunpowder, for some reason, it attracted the guards in charge of guarding the stone desert city. The aura of these guards was no less than that of these supporting soldiers. These are a group of soldiers who have undergone formal training. Their goals are the same at this moment. That is to maintain the safety of Stone Desert City. After Xiao Ding saw these soldiers, his nervous brows disappeared in an instant. He looked up at the arrogant Xian Chen and said coldly, "Boy, these are soldiers of the Empire. If you can, kill me in front of them. But I have to tell you in advance, if you dare to kill me in front of them, it will be equivalent to giving the Empire control." Haha, what a killing move and heartbreaking move, but Xiao Ding, do you think your wishful thinking is too accurate? Since I can kill you easily, why should I keep them? Don't forget, this is a desert. I think if a city is really destroyed, do you think those guys in the royal family will believe that it was done by me, Xian Chen, or Medusa? Xiao Ding did not expect that Xian Chen at such a young age could be so smart. After all, if that were the case, those guys in the Empire would rather believe that it was Medusa who did it. It is absolutely impossible to make random guesses about a boy who is not even 20 years old. The soldiers who came over were all frowning at this moment. Standing in the sun, their armors continued to refract the light, and some of the soldiers couldn't help but raise their hands to cover it. In front of real soldiers, these soldiers are really not enough to see. Looking at these neat teams, the faces of these soldiers, who are usually very good at having fun, are very ugly. Ahem, this young elder, although I don't know what hatred you have against these soldiers, please give me, the Lord of Mole City, some face. The speaker was also wearing armor and had a scar on his face, showing off his majestic appearance as a general. Looking at the opponent's armor, there was something strange about it. After careful observation, I realized that the opponent turned out to be a being with the strength of a great fighting master. One great Do master and 4 Do masters, Xian Chen murmured to himself, looking at the guards with 2 Do master cultivations standing beside the middle-aged man. He frowned slightly and smiled happily at the middle-aged man. Reply, I think Lord Moli may have misunderstood. I, Xian Chen, don't want to be enemies with these soldiers, it's just that these soldiers are used to being arrogant and bully me. Nowadays, Xian Chen has been in Doqi continent for a year, so he naturally already knows the rules of Doqi continent. Here, as long as you are strong enough, you will also have the confidence to talk to others. What's more, Xian Chen has already stood at the pinnacle of the entire Jiama Empire, so when facing these so-called city lords, it just depends on Suankan's own mood. Seeing that the young man on the ring was willing to give him a step up, City Lord Moli jumped up and stood firmly on the ring. He frowned and said to the ferocious-looking Xiao Ding, Captain Xiao Ding, this time, according to my opinion, City Lord forget it. After all, compared to being wiped out, the current situation is the best, isn't it? But Xiao Ding looked at Moli City Lord with an extremely ugly face, but because Xian Chen's strength was special, he might not be able to defeat him with his ability. Xiao Ding, whose eyes were gloomy, looked at Xian Chen helplessly but was helpless. After taking a deep breath, he faced Xian Chen. His face was extremely livid, full of reluctance. Boy, our army has suffered heavy losses. Since Lord Moli is willing to be the middleman, why not just forget about it? Everyone knew that Xiao Ding was willing to retreat. In front of Xianchen, if Xianchen was willing, he could definitely make the city completely disappear in the desert in an instant. Those supporting the army all had ulterior motives, and they were obviously very interested in Xiao Ding's decision. But Xianchen frowned slightly, remained silent for a moment, raised a sneer at the corner of his mouth, and said lightly to Xiao Ding, "Ha ha, since the lord of the city is willing to be the middleman, then I, Xianchen, can't continue to force others to make things difficult. So, just kneel down. Kowtow to me a few times on the ground to apologize, and maybe if I'm happy I might actually let you go." Is this going too far? Molai thought that Xianchen would definitely gain face if he opened his mouth, but that thought turned out to be such a result. As a city lord, Molai felt a little embarrassed. Xianchen gave Molai a cold look. "Shut up, I'm giving you face because we have no grievances, so you'd better be more honest with me. I, Xianchen, have always been kind to those who want to kill me. People are extremely disgusted. Since the two captains, Xiao Ding and Xiao Li, originally wanted to use the name of the arena to kill me, then I, Xianchen, will naturally not give up easily. Otherwise, how can I lead my disciples?" Xianchen said angrily, and the Moli city lord finally gave up his advice. Although he was indeed a great fighter, he could clearly feel that the young man in front of him was definitely not someone he could easily resist. And Xiao Ding's face was livid. Obviously he was unwilling to just listen to Xianchen's arrangements. "Brother Xianchen, forget it." At this moment, Qinglin suddenly shouted loudly. Xianchen looked at Qinglin and saw that the other party had unexpectedly held a dagger in front of his neck. Xianchen was really shocked. Xianchen really regards Qinglin as his sister, considered as relatives. But now the other party is willing to die for Xiao Ding. "Qinglin, put down that knife," Xianchen roared loudly, but Qinglin used the dagger slightly. When he saw that there was a bloodline on the other party's fair neck, Xianchen immediately shouted, "Wait! I promise you." Everyone is shocked. The eerie silence surprised everyone. Xiao Ding looked at Qinglin, who was begging for mercy for him, and his expression was also extremely ugly. Xianchen looked at Xiao Ding with indifference and said almost word for word, "Xiao Ding, today, the reason why I let you go, doesn't mean I won't kill you in the future. So please remember, the reason why I let you go this time, is because of Qinglin's sake. He actually gave up killing for a little girl." Ruan Suanji stood in the audience, looking at Xianchen on the ring, unable to calm down for a long time. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Baixiong. Chapter 148. After hearing Xianchen's words, Xiao Ding was stunned for a while. He was a being with the strength of a fighting master, but now he heard that his life was spared because of a little girl's plea. Naturally, he was very angry. Xiao Ding, whose face was extremely ugly, his eyes fell on Xianchen again. He couldn't help but shook his head and exclaimed, "I thought you were so capable. If you are capable, just kill me. I, Xiao Ding, will never hesitate." Haha. Xianchen smiled faintly, then took action and punched Xiao Ding hard in the abdomen. This extremely quick punch made Xiao Ding unable to defend himself. I saw Xiao Ding vomiting out acid water and kneeling in front of Xianchen with a pop. Xianchen looked at Xiao Ding, whose eyes were lifeless, and said calmly, "I won't kill you. After all, compared to you turning into a waste, there is nothing more joyful than this. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you. I think there must be many enemies in this stone desert. Since I have promised Qinglin not to kill you, I believe there will definitely be many people waiting to teach you a lesson." Xianchen smiled and shook his head, then raised his hand and patted Xiao Ding, then jumped towards the audience seat. Standing firmly in front of Qinglin, he reached out and pressed Qinglin's head, and said with a smile, "Qinglin, brother has promised you not to kill him, but it does not mean that there is no one else who will not kill him, So brother Ken, it's not bad to do this for you, you know. Qinglin raised his head, smiled slightly, and nodded lightly to Xianchen. Well, Elder Xianchen, can you go to my city lord's mansion? Molai extended an invitation to Xianchen with a smile on his face. Looking at the armored city lord in front of him, Xianchen hesitated for a moment and then nodded. Not long after, Xianchen and others were sitting in a spacious room. Qinglin, on the other hand, carefully served 4 cups of tea and then stood obediently behind Xianchen. Haha, Elder Xianchen is worthy of being from the main section. I have actually wanted to eliminate these soldiers for a long time, but due to the friendship between the two, I didn't take action all the time. Molai took a sip from the teacup and then turned to Xianchen, smiled. Smiling and nodding, Xianchen pondered for a while and said softly, haha, since City Lord Mo intends to clear out the support group, I will open the skylight and speak openly. In fact, this time I came to the Tagore Desert to find a place. Plant something. Something? What thing? Hearing this, Lord Moli asked with a slightly curious smile. Xianchen looked at the other party, hesitated for a moment, then tapped his fingers lightly on the table, and said lightly, I think the city lord is not a bad person, so I will tell you. In fact, this time I am here to find the strange fire. Strange fire? Molai looked at Xianchen in confusion, unable to believe that the other party would come to the Tagore Desert to look for strange fire. After a moment of confusion, Molai put down his teacup, frowned at Xianchen and asked, Elder Xianchen, with all due respect, this strange fire is something that only alchemists need, right? Even if there are alchemists in your Yunlin sect who need strange fire, as for you going out to look for it. Haha, City Lord Mo made you laugh. In fact, I am an alchemist. Xianchen smiled lightly, then took out the certificate issued by the Alchemist Guild and the Alchemist badge from the Naja, and placed them on the table casually. Seeing these things about the alchemist, the 2 girls Ruan Suanji and Xuelan sitting next to them suddenly stopped their movements, raised their heads, their faces were full of shock, their seductive red lips slightly opened, and they stared blankly into their eyes. Young man. In the room, everyone was staring at Xianchen stupidly. If it was amazing that Xianchen could become an elder of the Yunlin sect at an extremely young age, then with the identity of an alchemist, it would be even more amazing. These people were stunned. The disciples looked at each other, and some even asked Xianchen in confusion. Elder, I didn't expect you to be an alchemist. I, Aki, must work hard to become a person like you. Wake up, Wuliakai. I don't know if there will be one person like the elder in 10,000. It is definitely impossible for a person like you to reach his level. It shouldn't be, right? The elders must be practicing seriously. I believe the elders will definitely lead us to work hard. Looking at these disciples, Xianchen ignored them and focused his attention on the Lord of Moli City again. Lord Moli's face froze, and after a moment, a smile appeared on his brows, and he hurriedly cast an envious look at Xianchen. I didn't expect Elder Xianchen to have such a talent, I admire him. City Lord Mo congratulated while continuing to pour tea for Xianchen. After being overjoyed, City Lord Molai seemed to have remembered that strange fire was a very scary thing. He frowned slightly and said helplessly to Xianchen, that Elder Xianchen is like this. Although I have spent a lot of time in Shimo City, I have never heard anyone say that there is a strange fire somewhere. Traces of it? Seeing the other party's helplessness, Xianchen smiled faintly, then flicked the ring with his fingers, took out a simple sheepskin scroll, and threw it casually into the other party's arms. Molai looked at such a detailed map, but a terrifying surprise appeared on his face. Oh my god! How could there be such a detailed map? I can't believe it. Molai looked at the map and saw several flame symbols marked on it, but felt very complicated. Elder Xianchen, don't tell me, these flames are where the strange fires exist, right? From what I see, This place seems to be the eastern direction of our stone desert city. The eastern direction of stone desert city. Xian Chen raised his brows and motioned for the other party to return the map. He took the map and looked at the location of the glowing flame. It was indeed slightly south of the eastern part of Stone Desert City. Elder Xian Chen, is this map reliable? If there is really a problem there, it is impossible for those of us guarding the city not to notice the abnormality. Mo spoke again. After listening to his words, Xian Chen really reaction. After all, when the old man gave this map to him, he also reminded him that it was only a roughly determined location. If strange fire is really so easy to encounter, then it's really bad luck. And just when Xian Chen was about to give up on this area, a timid and soft voice came from behind Xian Chen. That, brother Xian Chen. The eastern location of Stone Desert City, does seem to be a bit strange. Although I'm not entirely sure, I can feel that there should be something in that place. Hearing this, Xian Chen was stunned for a moment, then suddenly turned his head to look at Qinglin, who had a hesitant look on his face. Mo, who was sitting on the chair, was also very confused. He has the strength of a great fighting master, so he naturally knows that the young man behind Xian Chen is most likely the snake man in the Tagore Desert. If we talk about normal times, maybe City Lord Mo would severely scold Qinglin for being abrupt, but it was different now. Although Qinglin was a snake, the brother she recognized was actually very awesome. Are you sure? Qinglin, you know, this kind of thing is no joke. Xian Chen looked at Qinglin seriously. When he saw the regretful expression on his face, he immediately stood up and said softly to Qinglin, "Don't worry Qinglin, even if there's nothing over there, my brother won't blame you. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Baixiong. Chapter 149. Well, thank you for your trust, brother. I remember it was about half a year ago. I couldn't sleep at first. In the middle of the night, I sensed an extremely powerful aura appearing outside Stone Desert City. You know? That breath. It seems to be somewhat similar to some of the bloodlines in my body. But when I felt that aura, I could clearly feel that even the leader of the Sand mercenary group would be much weaker in front of that aura. Xian Chen frowned and said nothing, looking at Qinglin in confusion, but he couldn't believe it. The bloodline she mentioned seemed to be somewhat similar, but Xian Chen couldn't help but think of Medusa, the overlord in the desert. Elder Xian Chen, Miss Qinglin is a descendant of the Snake Man. Since her bloodline and aura are similar, could that person be Queen Medusa? Mo pondered for a moment, and suddenly his face became extremely horrified. Elder Xian Chen, you must know that if it is really Queen Medusa, with her strength, even if she wants to destroy Stone Desert City, it will be an extremely easy thing for her. Also, if Queen Medusa really came to Stone Desert City and walked around, there is no way that we people would not notice it. Mo's face was ugly. The name Medusa could be said to be the most depressing name in the entire desert human race. Haha, you are just a great fighting master. Queen Medusa is rumored to have the strength of a fighting emperor. If she really came here, wouldn't it be a difficult thing as long as she doesn't want others to notice? Ruan Suanji mocked Mo with contempt, but Mo was embarrassed and speechless. Xian Chen didn't expect that Ruan Suanji would say such a thing, so he smiled knowingly, then looked at Qinglin and continued, "Liner, you must know that this kind of thing is no joke. You can really be sure that you will come that night. Is the smell here very similar to yours?" Brother, I don't know." Qinglin shook his head, but noticed the color in Xian Chen's eyes before continuing, "Although I did feel it at the beginning, I can only be vague. Sensed. I remember it was half a year ago. The guy with a very similar aura to mine seemed to be a woman. That night, she suddenly came to the eastern part of Stone Desert City and seemed to stay there for another night. And during that night, I could clearly feel that the energy in the eastern part of Stone Desert City seemed to be extremely violent. But, it seems that after that person left, I could clearly feel that when she left, she seemed to be injured again. Listening to Qing Lindy's words, everyone let out a sigh of relief. Xian Chen narrowed his eyes slightly and whispered, "Linner, more than half a year has passed, can you still determine where she stayed, specifically where? Although it's been half a year, I think it should be possible. Because the residual aura she left behind was too strong. So I believe that if you rely on the blood in your body, maybe there's a chance we can find that place." When Qing Lin was talking about the trace of blood in his body, her delicate little face was obviously a little sad. But when she noticed the tenderness on Xian Chen's face, she still forced a smile. "Brother Xian Chen, if you want to go, Qinglin will try his best to take you there." Ruan Suanji looked at the innocent Qing Lin, but couldn't help but shake her head. After all, for Qing Lin with snake man blood, this kind of inquiry was simply a different kind of torture. Xian Chen couldn't see the disappointment in Qing Lin's eyes. After taking a deep breath, he held Qing Lin in his arms and said softly to Qing Lin, "Don't worry, Linner, if we can really find strange people in that place, fire, can I take you out of this desert? Then, what if we didn't find it? Didn't brother leave the desert without Linner?" Qing Lin raised his immature face and looked at Xian Chen with curiosity. Under such innocent questioning, those around him also remained silent. The disciples of the Yunlin sect who were following him deliberately turned their heads away at this moment. Obviously, they were not sure what Xian Chen's decision would be. However, at this moment, Ruan Suanji suddenly squatted next to Xian Chen, reached out and gently touched her cheek, and said softly, "Don't worry Qinglin, your brother will definitely take you away from here. After all, I still want to take my sister with me. You are going to Yunlin section." Xian Chen looked at Ruan Suanji beside him. Sure enough, someone else still needed to set the stage at this time. "Really? Miss, if that's really the case, then Qinglin will be very happy," Qinglin said with a smile, not forgetting to kiss Suankin's cheek gently. In this case, the Lord of Moli City smiled at Xian Chen and said, "Elder Xian Chen, since Miss Qinglin has determined her location tomorrow, why not leave it like this? When we go to look for the strange fire tomorrow, can you let us know? Will you lead the guards to escort you?" "Haha, if City Lord Mo is willing, I am naturally very willing, but I, Xian Chen, still have something to say in advance. Since we are looking for strange fire, it will definitely attract the attention of many people. So I hope City Lord Mo can help me catch all the soldiers who have ideas tomorrow." Mo Lai's face darkened. He didn't expect Xian Chen to think about it for so long. "All right, Elder Xian Chen, don't worry. I will definitely help you make arrangements. If there is a disturbance tomorrow, I, Mo Lai, can tell you with certainty. I guarantee that if it does happen, I, Mo Lai, will be willing to die in front of you." As soon as Mo Lai finished speaking, he slammed a dagger on the table with a bang. Looking at this scene, Xian Chen smiled faintly, then stood up and said to the disciples, "Let's go." Yes. These disciples followed him one after another and left the city lord's mansion in Moli. Not long after, the guard standing next to Mo Lai frowned and asked Mo Lai, "City lord, is that guy too arrogant? He's just a child, how can you talk down to him?" Mo Lai frowned and looked at him, then said impatiently, "Do you think I am willing? Don't forget, that little girl with blue scales said that Queen Medusa has most likely been to that place. Don't forget, a place that can even hurt Queen Medusa. Do you think that guy Xian Chen is really just a child? What the city lord means is that Xian Chen's strength is very likely to be the same as Medusa's. This is impossible. Queen Medusa is a fighting emperor, what kind of existence is that? And Xian Chen is just a child no matter how you look at it. How is it possible that he can cultivate to the level of Queen Medusa? The guard said this in shock, obviously not believing that Xian Chen could really cultivate to the level of Medusa. But Emoli gave the other party a sharp look before continuing, no matter what, we just don't want to offend this kid. Otherwise, we may really disappear completely in this city like Xiao Li's guys. The Strongest Husband of Dopo. Author, Hui Bai Xiong. Chapter 150. Xian Chen, do you really believe that the place this little girl said is reliable? Ruan Suanji frowned and asked Xian Chen, obviously not believing that Qing Lin's information was necessarily reliable. But Xian Chen rolled his eyes at the other person, shook his head slightly, and there was a trace of speechlessness in his eyes. Not long after, some people were passing by and the Motai Ioncore was severely punished. Therefore, the eyes of some people looking at Xian Chen on the street were full of fear. Because it is tomorrow to find the whereabouts of the strange fire. So Xian Chen led a group of disciples to check in at a nearby inn. The waiter at this inn was trembling with fear after seeing some of Xian Chen's people. Is there any room available here? We're going to stay here tonight, Xian Chen said calmly to the waiter. But the waiter was so shocked that his lips trembled slightly, and he replied in a low voice, "Hey everyone, there are rooms, but they are under maintenance." Xiao Er's lies full of deceit made some people in Xian Chen dumbfounded. He threw a bag of gold coins into the other party's arms and said calmly, "Are these enough? If it's not enough, I can give it to you." Looking at the hundreds of gold coins, the waiter was so excited that he couldn't speak. He silently put the gold coins into his arms and happily arranged rooms for everyone. After these disciples moved in, Xian Chen did not forget to take special care of Qing Lin and expressed that he would keep Qing Lin in his room. However, Ruan Suanji refused. The reason given was that Qing Lin was still young and could not stay in the same room with Xian Chen, who was about to become an adult. Watching Ruan Suanji leave her room with Qing Lin, Xian Chen, who had nothing to do, lay on the window and looked outside. However, at this moment, the sound of Suana suddenly sounded. Looking at the vast farewell procession on the street, Xian Chen was confused and speechless. Looking at the guys holding the banners of the Modi Support Corps, Suankan's eyes finally fell on the young men in white robes at the front of the team. "Captain Xiao Ding, that Xian Chen seems to be at the window on the second floor of the inn next door to us," a soldier said softly to Xiao Ding. Xiao Ding raised his head and looked towards the window. When he saw it was Xian Chen, he was so angry that he couldn't speak. But when Xiao Ding and Xian Chen looked at each other, Xian Chen waved his hand gently to say hello to each other. Seeing Xian Chen like this, Xiao Ding was so angry that he couldn't speak. Xian Chen looked at Xiao Ding and saw that the clothes he was wearing were still the same clothes he wore on daily basis, so he jokingly said, "I didn't expect that Captain Xiao Ding would still wear such formal clothes on such an important day. Wouldn't it be too chilling for those guys lying in the coffin?" Xiao Ding was so angry that he was shaking all over, but he dared not speak out because he knew very well that if he really angered Xian Chen, he would probably not even mention those guys lying in the coffin. "I will really die along with those unlucky soldiers." His sharp gaze flickered, Xiao Ding raised his eyebrows and shouted in a low voice, "Let's go, don't forget what we are going to do." Xiao Ding shouted angrily, and the originally slow team instantly improved a lot. "Xian Chen, I saw it clearly from next door, now that they have paid the price, can you please stop embarrassing them?" The person who came was none other than Ruan Suanji. Xian Chen turned around and glanced at him, but ignored him and silently walked to the bed and lay down. At this moment, Ruan Suanji suddenly closed the door, then walked to Suankan's bed and sat down. Xian Chen looked at the other party with a confused expression. Just when Xian Chen was confused, Ruan Suanji said abruptly, "I'm going to rest. If you have nothing to do, don't disturb me." With that said, Ruan Suanji lay casually next to Xian Chen. You plan to sleep at my place today? Xian Chen's mouth twitched. Although Ruan Suanji did have a good figure, Xian Chen was not so stupid that he would not let go of his colleagues. Ruan Suanji did not open her eyes but deliberately squeezed Xian Chen. This bed is not big. You'd better not kick me off at night. Otherwise, I might really kill you with a sword. Xian Chen felt embarrassed, so he turned his head away silently. Perhaps because of Ruan Suanji's appearance, Xian Chen slept particularly soundly tonight. When Xian Chen opened his eyes, he unexpectedly found Ruan Suanji's legs on his belly. Turning his head to look at Ruan Suanji sleeping, Xian Chen took a deep breath. After a night of silence, Ruan Suanji opened her eyes, but saw that Xian Chen was not beside her, and immediately sat up. But when he noticed that Qing Lin was eating breakfast conscientiously, he was so shocked that his scalp went numb. Where is your brother?" Ruan Suanji asked Qinglin doubtfully, but Qinglin opened a pair of beautiful big eyes and smiled at Ruan Suanji and said, "Brother, he went down below to buy camels. He said he would use them later." "Oh." Ruan Suanji got up from the bed, washed briefly, then sat in front of the mirror and started to tidy up. I don't know how long it took, but when the two of them walked down the stairs, they saw that the Yunlin sect disciples were waiting downstairs early. "Teacher Ruan Suanji, you were resting in Elder Suankin's room last night? Oh my god. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect that our instructor Ruan Suanji also likes Elder Xian Chen. It seems that as long as you practice hard, you will definitely have many beautiful girls. Wake up. With your talent, it would be nice if you don't backtrack." These disciples were teasing each other, but Xian Chen stood at the door with an indifferent expression. Looking back at those guys, Xian Chen said lightly, "Let's go, you can go over there and have a look." Xian Chen spoke calmly. When all these disciples walked out of the inn, they really discovered that there were already many soldiers on the street. There were so many guards in the inn. Ruan Suanji walked to Xian Chen, frowned and asked, "With so many guards, are they too ostentatious?" "Haha, we made a big fuss in Stone Desert City yesterday. It would be difficult for us not to show off." While Xian Chen was communicating with Ruan Suanji, Molai, who was not far away, hurried over and said very respectfully to Xian Chen, "Elder Xian Chen, are you satisfied with my arrangement?" "Haha, City Lord Mo is indeed very resolute. He was able to recruit so many soldiers so quickly. If it weren't for the fact that I, Mr. Xian, knew in advance that you would arrange so many soldiers, I'm afraid I would really be surprised by you." "Ha ha ha, okay, Elder Xian Chen, let's stop being polite and let's go." City Lord Mo waved his hand and invited Xian Chen to get on the carriage. In the carriage, Ruan Suanji frowned and said nothing. Xian Chen saw that the other party had something on his mind, so he immediately asked, "What are you thinking about? Are you thinking that Molai will do something similar to robbery?" "Well, I'm not sure, but I always feel something weird there." Ruan Suanji continued to speak, but Xian Chen rolled his eyes at him and said helplessly, "Don't worry, if he really has that idea, Xian Chen, will definitely not let him return to the city alive." The guards guarding the carriage outside could not hear the conversation inside the carriage. Molai had made a special statement when leaving the city lord's palace, so these soldiers had to remain silent even if they heard this conversation.